Welcome everyone to today's panel. I'm really pleased to be able to sit here and chair this panel, mostly because I know that everyone sitting on this panel shares the same love that I have for animation and visual effects, which I hope you all do as well, which is probably why you're here. And before inviting everyone to introduce themselves, I thought what I would do is give a short introduction to the panel. Obviously, quite hard to capture everybody's prolific career in a very short space of time, but I'm going to try my best. So, Alex, to your left. Alex is a specialist in business development in the field of CGI and visual effects at T Visual Effects. He began his career as an early adopter of CGI in Eastern Europe in the 1990s with 22 years of experience. He started from a small local company, and he's made his way across the globe to have loads of partners with companies such as Cineloop Visual Effects, which is based in Malta. And then I'd like to introduce Paul Arian. So Paul has a rich career working in layout and digital cinematography at companies such as DNEG and MPC. Anybody that knows anything about visual effects knows, these are like companies that are really at the forefront of all of the blockbuster movies that we watch in the cinema. Things like Jungle Book, Dune, Avengers, and many others. And now he owns his own company called Control Chaos, and it's based in London. He is a photographer, a cinematographer, a director, and to my great happiness, also a lover of sci-fi. So next is Matthew Policino, who is a pioneer in the local visual effects industry. He's a managing director and visual effects producer at Stargate Studio. He's worked on many projects, such as the Black Mirror series. Also has a interesting background in architecture, so he might maybe talk a little bit about that as well. Then I have on my left, your right, Jean-Pierre de Battista. He has a career in publishing, music, and he's been pioneering 2D locally produced animation. He's a recipient of multiple awards, including the Arts Council funding, and most of his contributions are contributions to local storytelling through animation, notably as well using the local language. On his left, Tim Miller, film director for Deadpool, executive producer of the multiple 13 Emmy Award-winning Netflix animation anthology, it's quite a mouthful, Love, Death, and Robots, which is now at Volume 3, co-founder of the animation and visual effects studio Blur Studio, has a background in animation and illustration, and is a self-confessed hardcore fan of comics. And then last but definitely not least, Andrea Miloro, currently based at Technicolor Group as Chief Business and Strategy Officer, President of Micros Animation and MPC, with over 25 years of experience in animation. She's the president of Micros Animation and MPC, which are the companies known for films such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, those of you who are into that kind of thing, Lion King and Jungle Book. She is experienced with working with artists from all over the world, and the thing I am most pleased to say, she's a champion and advocate of diversity and inclusion in animation. So I did the headlines, and then what I wanted to do, I should also introduce myself. So I'm an academic, and you can't take the academic out of the academic. So I'm starting with another fellow scholar's thoughts on digital cinema as a starting point for this conversation. And there's this scholar called Lev Manovich, who in the 1990s tried to define digital cinema. And when he tried to define digital cinema, he said that digital cinema was live action, plus painting, plus image processing, plus compositing, plus 2D animation, plus 3D animation. And obviously in the 1990s, when he was writing this was like quite a novel idea, right? But it's fair to say that now when we talk about the moving image, you can't think about the moving image without thinking about some variation of this formula, if you like. So I know that some of the people on this panel in the late 1990s or early 1990s would have seen the beginning of their career. So what I wanted people to do was to talk about how they personally experienced these convergences in their own career. And also, I mean, this might not apply for everyone, but what foundational knowledge you had when you entered your career, like what paved the way for you. So I don't know who wanted to go first, but we can kind
Ladies
of maybe...
first.
There you go.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, I don't know if I'm using this right. You're much better at this than I am. Convergences. What paved my way? I moved to California for a year on a whim. I'm from New York. I really did think I was going to go home. It's been 30 plus years later. I fell into something that I still love to this day. But I got my first interview, or at least the appointment for the interview, by playing volleyball on the beach with somebody who knew somebody that needed a creative executive's assistant. And I became a creative executive, and I even worked for the likes of Simpson Bruckheimer and Nisita Lloyd and people at Paramount who were very good to me. And at a point where they were going to make a very young person a pretty big executive, as they used to do back in the 90s, I decided I wanted to learn how to make a movie. Because somebody said, oh, you'll definitely get the chair on the set one day. But do you want to know what you're doing, or do you want to be excess baggage? And I just thought, well, I don't like the sound of excess baggage. So I went to work I demoted myself, and I became a production coordinator on films. And I worked my way up to being a production executive for TriStar, and I loved that job, except for one part, visual effects, because I didn't understand them. And they used to rip me off constantly. And there weren't that many shops, and they did. They just ripped me. I couldn't tell if they were overcharging or not. And there was this little studio that just opened, and I went and I got a job at Digital Domain. And that's where visual effects started, and that led me to visual effects for a long time. And then I produced visual effects, and then from there, I slid into animation because I owed somebody a favor. And they said, I swear, this is true. They said, why aren't you on my set? And I was like, oh, okay. And that Monday I was on their set, and I was making a hybrid. And I kept saying, okay, we're going to figure out that character yet. And then I fell in love with animation, and that was it. And I've been doing and working with incredible talent. And my one knack was I always fell in with the most talented people. And I constantly said, can you educate me? And that was it. That's how I started.
Great.
And to here, that's 30 years.
So maybe if we just move around.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had learned illustration, but I'm so old that there was no such thing as computers back when we started in the field. But then there was, and I was waiting tables, and somebody said, hey, could you work on this thing called a computer? And I said, fuck yeah, I'm smart. I can do that. And then I thought it was the greatest tool ever invented, the greatest art tool, because it could be anything and everything. And I got completely hooked on it. And I went to work at a company that made medical films. So the first film I directed was So You Have a Sexually Transmitted Disease. And I'm not lying. That was the first film. And I was very proud of it. It was amazing. If they gave Oscars for that sort of thing, I think I would have won one. But I became obsessed with computers and computer art, and I never looked back. And I just tried to. I'm a nerd, so and an artist, so the computer side of it appealed to me, and I felt like I was living in the future. And the art side appealed to me because I felt like I could create any imagery I wanted, and I still feel that way every day I go to work.
Great. So Jean, did you want to talk a bit about your background?
I've entered into the animation foray around 6 years ago because I used to work mostly in publishing, book publishing before that. But let's say that the pivotal moment for me was when we released our first animation, which was spoken in Maltese. So we released our animation, it's called Storia Animalta, and they were 7 episodes about local history. And the good thing about that is that we were let's say that we were the first pioneers to go into something that was so long, with a duration that was like 150 minutes if you had 7 episodes of 20 minutes each. And that was really the pivotal moment, because we've seen that we fill the gap that was needed locally because, for example, us Maltese, we learned the Italian language because we had cartoons in Maltese when we were young. And that was a gap.
In Italian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In
I
Italian.
learned Italian once.
There weren't cartoons in Maltese when we were young. So managing to fill in that gap was, let's say, a very pivotal moment for myself as a producer and also for the company because it was a small success for a local studio.
Great, thanks. Matthew.
Hi, so my name is Matthew. First of all, this is an extremely intimidating panel.
Oh God, sorry.
It's so great to be on this panel, but yeah, I can't but say that it is quite intimidating. But nonetheless, I started my career as a kid by watching way too much television. I mean, that is absolutely the truth. My parents were so worried, pretty much like parents are worried when their kids play too much video game. And it qualified me in some way that it gave me a passion to want to make one of those things happen. 1977, a Go Nagai picture is going to be refreshed now on the 5th of July, and the passion I had as a kid is coming back 40 years later, nearly as strong. All my imagination, I'm dying to see what they're going to do with the new version of my childhood heroes. So I really have revisited where it all started a number of times in my head. But short of that, I am a non-academic. I couldn't get through school to save my life, and basically my parents threw me into drafting course because they figured it was a profession which I could draw. So I drew architecture for many years until I met computers, and computers let me animate and turn around and negotiate design in a more organic and a faster way until architecture became too tight for me. Even though, I mean, we're sitting in this building and the architecture is just the canvas for the art, right? This is basically their storyboards and matte paintings right above our heads. So,
Can you tell me, since maybe you know, why is the perspective wacky on the ceiling? Is it meant to be viewed from the center of the room?
exactly, it's a one-point perspective, right?
Yeah, but why? Why not from directly below? Why is it this way? It's meant to be viewed from over here, right?
500-year-old question.
What?
500-year-old question.
Yeah. That is so early that the dynamics of perspective and how they're being viewed, and we're still trying to figure out how to make something come to life from one person's
I think
point
it
of
makes
view.
sense from over here.
Possibly.
Instead, yeah.
Maybe from the middle.
If
Maybe.
anybody knows, yeah, maybe from the middle of the room, but not from here.
There's a sweet spot where you wear the glasses.
Anybody know? No? It'll be a mystery.
So anyway, I got into animation, started to figure out how to make the moving image, and the rest is pretty much history. Nowadays, we run a studio together with a number of artists, and we have a great time making that happen. Next.
Paul.
My turn. All right. My journey is way back from the early 90s. And I always ask myself why an image looks so good. I was not really like, why is this animation like this or that done? So, always, why is an image look so good? And that was sort of some of my beginnings. My first render is from before Windows 95. And I just wrote my name and I pressed render and I went like, oh wow, this is the future. So I went on a journey back in the day. There was no documentation or anything like that. So I just self-trained, self-taught for quite multiple years. And then one day I got hired with a floppy disk. It was like a 1.44 megabyte floppy disk. And they were looking for somebody for half a year. And then somebody looked at these images and they were like, "You've done all of this? Yeah, you're hired." What's my title? It's like, "You're head of modeling." How many are we? Just you. Okay, good title. Thank you. So that was for a film called Free Jimmy. I was one of the first Free Jimmy employers. That was a Norwegian company. At the end, it was finished in London, UK. Like 5 years later, when I already left for Canada. I worked for William Shatner's company, Core Digital Pictures. for multiple years. I went into compositing, so on SGIs and all that beautiful things, elastic reality and crazy softwares. Then I moved into layout. Then I went to film school as well. I DP'd a few things throughout my 27 or so career years. On-set supervision. I moved to London 2008 to work on Prince of Persia, that was. And because I love the game, you see, because the game was like Prince of Persia, like I was one of the few people in my...
Does anyone remember that game? I played it.
It was an amazing game. And I moved for that at a company called MPC, where I've been for like around 9 years. At MPC, I had some quite amazing experiences. One of them is like working directly with Ridley Scott for Alien Prometheus. I was the lead on that. I put the pyramids in place. I landed Prometheus on that spot with Ridley in the room, like one of the most memorable changing things, because I'm a massive Alien 1 fan.
We said he was
and
a
Blade
big fan of
Runner
sci-fi.
for sci-fi and Blade Runner. Then one of my highlights of my career, I was the on-set supervisor for Jungle Book, worked with Jon Favreau for a year in LA, so I technically planned how to shoot the entire film, like shot by shot for 1 year, like 1,000 shots. It doesn't matter if it's a close-up or whatever it is, so that was amazing. Like Digital Domain, worked together with the guys as well. Then I moved to, after that, we took an Oscar for VFX for Jungle Book with the team. Then I was invited by DNAG to build the layout department there because they had no departments structure. I was the global head of layout for DNAG. I built the biggest layout department on the planet. When I left, I think from me first to 450 in layout around the globe. We took 4 Oscars for visual effects in that time, which, obviously I'm very proud of everybody in the team. Everything is a teamwork in this field. Then I decided to make my visual effects company. It's called Control Chaos in London. The title is really what this film and visual effects is, Control Chaos. That's my company. I'm currently directing a feature film. It's called The Longhouse. It's the recording of a music album in the Arctic Circle, which we are in edit. So I went, and it's like a feel-good movie, back to nature, back to your roots. Nobody dies. There, and right now I'm also about to direct a live-action film that has AI involvement. Is not out yet, the news, but hopefully in a few weeks I can announce that.
There you go.
Thank you.
I think you just did announce it. They're filming this, right?
I did not say any titles. Thank you.
Alex?
Okay, so now it's probably my turn to go back to my childhood. So I was raised in a family of cinematographers. And despite this fact, I never planned to do anything related to the industry. I was studying law and dreamed of being a lawyer. And then in 2002, I met a guy who's sitting right there, one of the pioneers of the industry in Eastern Europe, Dmitry. And he showed me what computer graphics is about. And at that time, he had a team of 10 people, and they were doing crazy things for the local market, some TV shows, advertising, and I was there to help him to structure the company and just take it to another level. And that's how it happened, just step by step, for more than 22 years. And now we're an international company working for the American market. We do a lot of things related to the advertising market, like We took part in 8 spots for the Super Bowl this year, and I think there was like 25 in total. So we also win some awards for the advertising, like Tele Awards, Cannes Lions. And finally, we decided, at some point, we decided to open a company that would be related to VFX and for features. And well, then we started to work internationally for European projects, for China, and finally for Hollywood. This year, we released the Beekeeper movie with David Ayer as a director and Jason Statham as the main guy there. Like always, he's brutal and he's just punishing someone. So we were the main vendor for this movie, and right now we're moving forward in this direction. Finally, we came to Malta to open an entity here and to build up a studio, a local studio. And with specialists. So it seems that this is probably another way, you know. So it's not coming from the creative perspective, but it's something like a managing background that was involved here in my career. But it's also interesting in terms of development, the company, and going from a local company to international.
Yeah, so I think one thing that rang true with all of our panelists was obviously this is a panel about technology, and you've already figured out that technology has been a big factor in most people's career. Anyone, you know, that is involved with visual effects or computer animation at some point will kind of point to that. But also another big factor are networks and people. And Tim was really keen that I kind of emphasize this point. So here it is, Tim. The importance that actually that many artists in their career in the industry should be able to work with a team. Which isn't something that often people recognize as a really important skill. So we all spoke about our own backgrounds and the skills we come with, but teamwork is one of these like key skills, which whenever we spoke about, we were all like, yep. So did you want to sort of speak to that, Tim?
Well, I would first point out, it's interesting that you say, well, I've come from the business side of things, and I've come from the art, and I do the business side of things, and I don't think you can have one without the other. And in fact, I think if you're an artist who doesn't understand that you have a certain amount of days to do the job or a certain amount of budget that your art has to fit in, you're going to fail to complete your task. So I feel like those things are all very important. It's definitely a team sport, and knowing how to manage people. I've seen a lot of supervisors come up, or artists to supervisor to director over the years, and the ones that make it or are good at it are not just good artists. There's a lot of really good artists that are shitty managers, and nobody wants to work with them. And so you don't get to manage in a team sport or to do the bigger jobs if you don't know how to manage people. So when I left Sony ImageWorks to start Blur, my supervisor said, dude, you are the last fucking person who should be running a company because you're the worst employee ever. But it turns out that when you're in charge of people, you have to treat them right. You have to make sure they're happy. You have to give them the best shots. You can't take them for yourself. And I think that as you grow in that skill, you'll learn to be a better artist and a better leader, and not so selfish. When you're just an artist, you can afford to be selfish. When you're a manager, you can't. And I think that's important in this field in particular.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah,
Paul,
like
you agree with that, don't you?
I 1000% agree with it. Like, without your team, you're nothing. It doesn't matter what position you are in. And things like this, I'm teaching a course, and I'm spending one day only to teach teamwork. and who matters and what, and don't be a douche. Like, because you have very, very short legs in this business, because people don't want to work with you anymore. That's to begin with, and to understand that 1,000 people make an image, right? So that it's so much art, technology, everybody's specialties coming together. Like, they are from any level. Nobody wants to work with you after a while. And then bad managers are a disaster. Because people leave and they will never come back. So it's very, very important. I cannot emphasize this aspect enough.
And that goes both ways. Like, the artists have to prove that they're good team players too. And one thing I'll just pass on that always worked for me as an artist rising was, let's say the director gives you a task to do this shot, to animate it a certain way. But as you start to animate it, you realize, this is not the best way to do this shot. There's a better way to do it. Always do what the director asks you for. And then do it the way you want it. And say, here's what you asked for, but I had to think, and there's another way to do this. Perhaps you'd like to take a look at that. And often, once he sees why you changed it, you grow. And being silent is never a good idea. You should always speak up. Not be annoying, but you should always put forward ideas because people appreciate it. As a director, I don't have enough time to spend with a certain shot or a sequence as the artists do. They're going to live in it for days. I'm doing a lot of other things. So it's good for them to offer suggestions. I really appreciate it, especially if they've tried what I asked them to do first.
But
never afraid to be.
But match the previous. Your idea is very good. But match the previous.
Yeah, well, you can, I mean, that's the great thing about being a director. You can always say, thank you for your idea, now fuck off. And you get credit for it. But if it's a good idea and you take it, you get credit for it.
And that's where the entrepreneurship aspect comes up. So if you're an animator and you've gone an extra step, that shows that you can also be a good entrepreneur if you had to do your own thing. So completely agree.
To add for the teams, right? Because when as managers hiring, right? If you build teams and you start hiring, you look into the best character, you look into soft skills, you look into who fits in my team before I don't know what talent you have, because you don't want a Trojan horse, right? Because it can destroy the mood, it can bring so many bad experiences to the rest of the team. If you have a bigger team, people are like, why do you hire this guy, man? Nobody wants to work with so hiring, I always look for who fits into the same team.
Paul, can you tell me how do you do that? You use AI to identify the right person because it's always such a tricky question. Who is going to be a dead fish?
Well, most of the time when you talk to people, you feel it after years of experience. You start talking. It's like, don't make it 5 minutes. Just talk, let them talk about the work, past experiences. You're living in a world of references, actually. That's film. There's no real market like people think it is. It's a word of mouth is important. People want or not to work with this guy. You look at the resume, go, oh, you were in Vancouver. Let me call my Vancouver friend. So if you are not nice, it has consequences.
Because we hire people, we don't just hire talent. And how many times have we hired that guy and you say, but he's a great talent, he's a bit awkward, but he's going to fit in. We're going to make him part of the culture, and he's going to find his space, and he'll warm up, and slowly, he starts to dismantle the people around him, and you start to figure out that you've got a little... I love the Trojan horse. I mean, it's great. He's sitting in the middle, and all these things are coming out, and changes your landscape, so...
And HR calls you.
Yeah, and HR calls...
That said, there's always a place for animation, if more than any other filmmaking, is a place for oddballs, right? It's a place for strange people with strange ideas, and they can fit in too. They just can't be, shitheads.
Yeah.
Andrea, would you agree?
Yeah, it would be nice if everybody got along and they weren't shitheads. Yes, I agree with Tim.
It sounds basic.
It sounds basic.
Yeah.
Teams are very important. It's animation, for instance. You create every single thing It's you don't have the luxury of going out and changing the shot, go and getting a different plate. You know, oh, we're going to go, you know, composite something else into this.
Yeah.
It's, I need that blade of grass to move now because it looks like hell because it's just sitting there and it's static. So at Sony, they used to say, oh, dear God, Andrea's 3-second rule, because something had to move within 3 seconds. It just couldn't sit there for more, because I had to always call it out. But the teams are important. The nuancing of the teams. What I really love is when you get to have the same people work together again, because there's a shorthand. And in the shorthand, my producer head will say, there's an efficiency, but there's also a synergy. So I think you get more of the magic. I think you get more of the innovation. There's something that they wanted to do on the last show that they bring to the next show, and that just elevates everything. And that's what I love to see. I love walking. I don't get to produce anymore. I get to plow the field, so as I call it, so that the producers and the teams can run down the fields, and they do a great job at it. But it's when I get to walk across the floor and you can feel it. You can see a lighter looking over an animator's shoulder. You could see a composer discussing something in a, you know, over a coffee, and you know the shot's going to get better. That's what I like.
We deliberately didn't have departments where people sat together. I would make animators sit next to compositors and lighters sit next to modelers, because if you're fucking somebody down the pipeline, you often wouldn't hear about it if they're in another part of the building, but if they're sitting next to you, they're going to go, dude, what the fuck? And I think it's a great, it's a great policy.
And I think what that illustrates as well is that it's really, when we're talking about these films, we're talking about the sum of the parts really being greater than the whole, that all of these things are connected, and don't think all the time people recognize that we interacting with each other and affecting each other along the pipeline, and the importance of that, within the team.
COVID fucked up for everybody.
Yeah, it did a bit, didn't it? Yeah. So just to shift a little bit the discussion away from teamwork to technology, I kind of wanted to start by asking you, and maybe we'll start with John because he has a background in 2D animation, whether you can talk about a pivotal moment in his career where technology changed a workflow or a creative process.
Yes, practically it's quite simple. It's the software. So softwares like Toon Boom, for example, today that are used in 2D animation, they created a situation where we can work with a small team or a large team, and you have all the basic aspects of creating an whole animation from script to the final render, all on the cloud, which means that, okay, you need the studio, you need people to interact with each other and bang their heads against each other. But then that technology obviously has been extremely pivotal because it becomes cost effective.
Yep. And also when we talk about tools and technologies, we always sort of tend to go to the computer and digital spaces, but it's important, I guess, to remind us all that, the pencil is a tool, right? Yes. So when we're talking about tools, it could be in the widest possible sense. Yes. And, any technology has an impact on things that come. In
fact, we will now talk about the monster in the room, about
the monster,
AI,
the elephant in the room.
As we've been talking
which
before.
I think Paul has had something he wanted to say about. Yeah.
I have an answer for the AI.
Well, before
I wish I would have bought more stocks of NVIDIA like 3 years ago. The visual effects in animation is actually a tech thing driven, right? If you make these big movies, your friend is your pipeline. If not, you cannot push the volume, you cannot do iteration, you cannot update anything, and this goes for animation, and visual effects is quite the same. Like masses and masses of, I remember Dark Crystal, there were 4,000 shots, and a rig update showed up. And it was quite not planned at that moment, and I go, we cannot find the shots where this rig is, right? So if you think about massive films, tech is your friend, but then is this technology and artistry that needs to fit together. And Left and right, everybody is your friend when you open up a ticket.
And Tim, could you think of...
Well, if I'm assuming that a lot of you are either animators or aspiring animators or in the business, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting in this hot room, right? But I would say the 30,000-foot perspective is quit whining about AI because it's not going anywhere. So if you're sitting there hating on it, you're wasting your time. It would be much better spent figuring out how to use it to do what you want to do creatively, because you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's not going to happen. It's just not the way the world works. That's my personal advice. The way I would like to see it used and the way I plan to use it at our studio is animation should not be as expensive as it is. Making movies should not be as expensive as it is. And if there's a way for me to tell bigger stories, stories that I can't afford to tell right now, and there are a lot of them, then I'm all for it. If I don't want to tell the same stories with less people. I want to tell bigger stories. And I think that AI can help that in the same way that technology has all helped. I'm not saying this is not different. This is fucking different than motion capture. It's happening very fast. And so I think it's important to embrace it as much as you possibly can and see how it fits into the overall workflow. At the end of the day, even if you're using AI, you still have to have an eye that says, this is good and this is not. This is what I want and this is what I don't want. Regardless of how you get to that image, I don't really have any advice on how you acquire that 10,000 hours of knowledge, but that's the most important thing. At the end of the day is that you're the person that says, this is what I want and I don't want that, because you have an infinite number of choices now, which is great, but also kind of daunting. And what I'm saying is, don't be daunted. Can you say that? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of it. I'm both terrified and excited, but I'm going to go most of the time with excited.
And
Yeah,
often...
I couldn't agree more, because AI is here to stay, and I don't think it started yet. I just mentioned to you, right? I don't think it started yet. You should see in 1 or 2 years what's happening. But if you look at the market, there is a shift now where smaller studios and people can achieve faster results. Why don't you just go on the train? Right? Because you could tell stories. You're here for stories. If you have a shit script, you have a shit script. Bye. So why don't you think about your script? Why don't you think about your ideas? And you go, how fast can I put them on screen, even by myself, to a point? That was not possible a long time ago, right? Now you can make amazing images, use them. And there is a shift. I'm not sure if you agree about big studios, small and middle, shifting powers.
I definitely see it. On the day that Sora came out, I happened to have been asked to speak at a Microsoft event about AI with an AI researcher. And Sora came out like an hour before. So I hope some of you may have seen it. It was terrifying. And the beginning of my talk was, you guys realize that you're giving nuclear weapons to terrorists, right? You're selling cigarettes to children, and you're trying to tell us it's good, and maybe it is, but let's not lie and think that we all know where this is going. We don't. I don't know where it's going. I know it's going very fast, and it feels exciting right now, but it won't feel exciting if there's massive job losses in the industry. But the only way that is going to be avoided is if we embrace it and incorporate it into the work and make more stuff with it. That's the key, because otherwise...
Maybe it's just another tool in the toolbox.
It is, but it's a tool that makes other tools. That's the scary part of the exponential curve with this new technology.
It's also worth pointing out that, we talk about things like Midjourney and ChatGPT, and that's all now in public consciousness. But for a long time, anyway, machine learning is it's an old thing. I work with researchers that have been doing this for over 15 years, and they're in computer animation. And it's a lot of the time embedded in the tools anyway that we're using, whether we're conscious of it or not. If you're using Grammarly, for example, you're using AI, right? And it's there, and I think I'm with Paul on this. I don't think it's going anywhere.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
anytime soon. I mean, Tim, I was interested.
It's going everywhere. That's
yeah.
It's going everywhere. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
In a scary kind of way. I mean, it's interesting as well. You brought up the job losses, but also, I mean, I suppose there are ethical aspects around the development of AI, and I personally have come in contact with some software developers that are even employing philosophers to consider, you know, like ownership of digital doubles, for example, who owns your image, who owns your voice, and like, what are we doing with AI? Did you have any thoughts on that?
You're trying to start some shit, aren't you?
I am.
Look, I think there's the obvious ones that are easy to say. You can't use an actor's likeness without, in some way, compensating them, or the actor's voice. Using YouTube videos to train AI, that's a more slippery slope, right? And if any artist says they're not influenced by what they see every day, or I know I personally grew up copying Frank Frazetta's drawings out of his book. That's how I learned to draw. So I can't sit here and say that I feel like that's ethically wrong. But there are ways. I've talked to some technologists, and there are ways that, like, if you dug under the hood of Midjourney, it can tell you that I used 0.007% of Frank Frazetta to make this image here. There are ways that we'll be able to monetize that for the artists, I think, in the fullness of time. But I think inside of 5 or 10 years, you're not going to have anything. It's all going to be a mushed together thing. And when you use knowledge from ChatGPT to train ChatGPT GTP5 or whatever its successor, it quickly becomes not about what human created it, but where it was created or when it was created. So I think it's going to quickly lose its meaning. You can't go back and say, you know, Michelangelo needs to be compensated for the Sistine Chapel. No. It's just not going to happen.
No. Thoughts? Anyone? Oh God, this is so downer.
Sorry.
Let's not be Debbie Downer about AI.
I'm not down about it. I'm pretty excited about it.
Rules have to be established, right? Because it's not going to go away.
No,
so
that's right.
Like freedom is rules and laws to protect the other's freedom, and that's freedom, right?
Right.
So in cases like this, what do you do with it, right? I don't see very big movements from the influential companies, you know.
Right.
It should start from the top, Adobe, you know, and you could make it work, you know, like. Because there are
when
rules.
as artists we're all sitting here hoping for the protection of lawyers, we're fucked, right?
Yeah.
Like if we think lawyers are going to save the industry, we're fucked.
Yeah.
So on that note, how should upcoming talent prepare for this future landscape? Anyone?
So I had a great time speaking with Andrea over these couple of days, and really comparing my reality as a small studio to the experience she has in huge studios. And besides the obvious that the dynamics of creativity and of execution are the same, we both recognize that technology is making more possible with less. We're getting there way faster. I will admit that a year ago we got into the theater at the studio, and we all together, the five artists, watched Love, Death and Robots, and we were amazed at and very, very inspired. And that set us going. You know, that really set us going. And I had no idea how much we could achieve, but technology now is allowing us to dream with a smaller team. Because with a big enough team and with enough talent and the right hires, you can get there. But just like with Midjourney and with AI, you can get there faster, sooner, quicker. So it's freeing us. If you don't need the National Orchestra to score a piece of music, but the Mac in your bedroom is enough, then now you're free of that limitation and you can actually produce something that's in your head without the limitations of what's in your pocket.
And think about this, if you want to look at it from a positive light. Blur has about 100, I have about 120 employees, and we have freelancers. Maybe we go up to 180. I know, it sounds small, right? Doesn't it? Some studios have hundreds of artists, and these people are scared as shit. I can tell you because I talk to them every day. So if you're a studio with 5 people and you go, oh my God, I can create a short film using these tools that's as good, that could go in Love, Death, and
I'll
Robots.
show it to you, and then you will judge.
I know you can. I mean, I know you can. And so, and I know that there's 100 other small studios around the world that will be able to do that.
But the
and
conversation...
if I were you, I would feel more excited about that because I'm worried about how do I keep 150 people employed, because if
Absolutely.
I don't,
I think
they'll
what's
come and
important
cry.
is we now have a conversation. You have to appreciate one thing. I am an islander, such as Alexander. Paula,
Myself as well. Half islander.
And I think we all feel a little islanders inside, even if we are not, from a little rock in the middle of the Mediterranean. And there's an isolated mentality that you are born with, and reaching beyond your shores is a psychological and, in our case, a physical limitation. But technology, for us, is allowing to build bridges to communicate with other industries, professionals, art forms, and platforms. And this is what is very exciting. So what I would like to do is think that AI and technology, actually, more than AI, I think game engine in our industry is just a bigger game changer, is allowing us to interact and to create together across borders.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking forward to, is conversation.
Yeah, one thing we wanted to talk about was how technology has democratized the field. So access to technology, and maybe considering like shifts, where before we would talk about the digital divide. In fact, like what Matthew's just pointed out, it does make things more accessible. I know, Alex, you had as well some thoughts on that.
Well, I'm actually one of the supporters of the new technologies, because I believe that can give us new opportunities, and that's gonna just develop another kind of creative atmosphere. Because using those tools, it's can be really beneficial for the speed and for the amount of projects that we can produce. And as you said, the small team, like the smaller team, we have about like 120 people, and comparing to the bigger companies, that's like nothing. But we still can do a lot, and it also, like new technologies and AI give you a chance to do something that you, for example, if you are a creative person and you can't draw, but you can use AI to, like Midjourney, for example, to provide a concept to your client and approve everything just really quickly. And that is, I assume it as a prosthetic, let's say. So it helps just to compensate compensate something to the people who actually don't know how to do things, but they have creative mindsets, and they can potentially do something great.
Yeah, and also, one thing we spoke about was just potentially like shifts in creativity, where we tend to always think or locate creativity within the visual, but how that creativity is being expressed now is no longer necessarily directly connected to draftsmanship. So, often like my students, they always have a little bit of a complex if they're not great illustrators, for example, and they feel like, oh, I'm never going to be a good animator, or I'm never going to be a good compositor because I'm not a good illustrator. But you tend to find like your way, and some tools enable you then to express that creativity in different ways. Potentially, that might be
That's
the
exactly
case.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. That just makes your opportunities much bigger.
Yeah,
And
but we have programmers who want to tell stories on my university course, and they don't know how to draw, save their life, but they can create a storyboard using Midjourney, and they'll submit, and they tell their stories, So it is like empowering for people that don't have those skills, I think.
Everybody wants to be a director.
Everybody does. Everybody
Not
has a story
everybody.
to tell, right?
You said you wanted to be a director, and then you
not
thought,
no.
no, didn't you say I wanted to do that? But if you're not, your baggage.
Oh no! You could either learn how to make a movie, and you can definitely have a chair on a set as an executive. But most executives never take the time to learn the process. or they come through one lane. So what the guy was telling me was, you're good at this creative lane, but if you really want to make a movie, you have to go learn, or you're going to be excess baggage on that chair. So I got the chair, but it was a producer one. I stay in my lane. I know what I'm good at.
I would also say my other biggest piece of advice is do not underestimate the power of I don't know. Do not underestimate the power of could you teach me this, or could you help me with this, because people are really happy to help you. Deadpool and Terminator, both times, first day on set, I say, I really don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I have a vision, but I don't know how to get there. Would you all please help me not look stupid? And people are so happy to help you do that. It's great. It brings everybody together, and it makes the film better. And like I said before, you get all the credit for it. So it really is great to open the door to that, and people enjoy it. And I don't know why people are afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
It really opens the door to learning. And if you really don't know, everybody knows you don't know. And then it's doubly bad because they're talking shit behind your back too. Like,
And then sometimes it's not true because they're really good. They say they don't know, but then they're really talented artists.
well,
So that's it.
self-deprecating is also a useful talent.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
Like
Sorry,
I
go on,
heard
yeah.
some unbelievable directors saying, "I don't know, anybody knows," and actually get more respect, right? Because you go, "Oh, okay." If not everybody looks at this one guy, and everybody thinks like he knows everything, and he goes like, "I have no fucking clue," and you're
Yeah.
like, "Wow." So then people jumping and helping out. I think Churchill said it takes courage to stand up and talk with the same courage to sit down and listen.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
You,
That's
you
right.
guys talk about Malta's a small island and you feel a sense of isolation, but I started in a small town and then I went to Hollywood where I thought, oh, everybody's going to know how to do everything here. This is the best of the best. No. You run into stupid people on a small island in a small town where I grew up, and a lot of stupid people in Hollywood. And in fact, they're more stupid, I think, sometimes. And so you get in these rooms where you expect you're going to get all the answers that you never had, and they don't know either.
And they don't ask.
but
Yeah.
They don't ask.
They don't ask.
They
Yeah.
don't,
Nobody
they
knows
don't say,
anything.
Can you educate
Yeah,
me?
they don't say.
They don't say it because they're supposed to be in that job and know. And
Yeah.
a lot of them don't know. So what you guys are doing, what it's music to my ears, is because when you say and you ask the question, when you get a Tim Miller on set and he says, hey, can you help me? Don't make me look like an idiot. I'll take the credit at the end, but I'm building a team. You get
Yeah.
people invested in you. And that was always, but I didn't realize I was doing it when I did it because I really didn't know. And I already had the job. That was my other thing. If somebody said, hey, do you think you could do this? And I'd be like, okay. And I always said yes. It was like, Andrea, can you go and do a 14 camera shoot on Daytona 500? And I didn't even know what a magazine was other than People or maybe Town and Country.
Confidence is
And
a
it
good
was film.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't say you can do it if you really can't do it, because that's dangerous too. But I would say that, I think a negative byproduct of COVID and the isolation that we all have here is that nothing, especially if you're just getting into the industry, that's where I think it's going to have the most negative effects, because so much of what you learn is from the people around you. You learn how to be a better rigger from a conversation over coffee. You learn how to be a better artist from a conversation smoking a cigarette out back. A lot of the osmosis that goes from expert to people starting out, a lot of the things that I learned were from people that were casual conversations on the way to the bathroom. I see something cool on somebody's screen and I stop and ask them how they did it.
Before I reference the fact that I'm not an academic at heart, and I think this is our time when you don't need to have the grade to start to make a difference. I think psychologically another limitation is that you need to know how, or you should have been taught how. But nowadays, the fact that you're presented with a tool that nobody knows how to use, nobody knows what that's going to bring to the table, is empowering for everybody. It makes a level playing field, and the creatives, anti-academics, jump in and they start to get their hands dirty. In the 80s, we had software that we ripped off something, had no idea how it worked, and would jump in, without manuals and hacked our way through. And it was exciting and empowering. And there's a right way to do it, and then there's your way to do it. And nowadays, I think manuals are less and less available because I think not even the people that make the stuff know why it's doing what it's doing. You put in a data set, and then it starts spitting out images. And
The happy accident.
What's curious to me is why the artificial intelligence product looks ever more sane, and our world is looking like ever more insane. It's when you're watching the news, you're not quite sure which is the fiction and which is the fact. I think we're starting to want to live in a more relatable, data-driven, controlled set reality rather than the stuff that's hitting.
It could be
Yes,
that,
we're ceding the control to our AI overlords very, very soon now to solve the. In America, I wish it would happen before the next election, personally. But we won't go there. I'll stop there. I swear to God.
Okay.
it could be that the AI, like we said, I don't know how you do something. Hey AI, what are you doing? I don't know. Probably that's one of the. It doesn't know as well.
Yeah, but you don't know how to turn. You don't know what happens when you turn on a light switch either. But I do love the democratization that technology brings. Unreal Engine is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Unity is amazing. My workstation with software when I had a job at my first visual effects job was about $80,000. And now I could equip a whole studio for that with powerful computers. I think it's fantastic that people can do this in their basement in their underwear.
To extend that as well, the internet is amazing. I mean, the internet, I should say I'm very interested in the Global South, but the internet has been a real game changer in like creative industries in the Global South because of the access to the communities that Matt's talking about, where, software like Blender, for example, has big online communities sharing knowledge about practices where people are just trying stuff and they're sharing what they're learning in a really like open and free to access space. And it was not like that when I started. Like you said, the software was prohibitively expensive, and you just,
Everything was prohibitively expensive. My most exciting purchase earliest was a Panasonic DVX100, the first consumer camera DV that gave us a progressive frame.
Yeah.
We don't need to deinterlace a 576 by 768 frame to extract the key. This is actually A and B fields together on one spot on the timeline that gives us something that looks like a film scan. So that right there, just before Red came out and brought it all down, and power started coming down to the people, and we started to have the means to shoot, to capture, to process, to edit, to manipulate. It all started to come down, and a smaller budget bought you a better studio, right?
Yeah. So the next bit of the discussion, I wanted us to focus on national and international markets. And that's because some of the people on the panel obviously are either based locally, working internationally, or nationally, working with employees that are based locally and or internationally. But then we also have some other people on the panel who I think, as just the general state of play, is always international in terms of like the operations of what they do. So could you talk a little bit about how technology has facilitated or hindered collaboration in that space? Maybe Andrea, I don't know if you wanted to take that.
Okay. Well, I do work for an international company, so everything we do is global around the clock. We're pretty much up 24 hours a day, hopefully not 7 days a week. But I think Tim kind of hit upon where the boom was the pandemic. So originally it was how do you work from home? And that was kind of not a thing. And there were some people, even way back at Sony, that had mirrored machines, but they would buy them. We wouldn't supply them. And then it became, oh crap, we can't get to the office, and we still have to get these shows done. And then there was Teradici, and how many can you buy, and how many can you deploy, and where are the people? And we have studios just, North America, we're in Canada, we're in the US, we're in London, we're in Paris, we're in Adelaide, we're in Bangalore, we're all over the place. So that's why 180 people sounded so good, but really good. But the funny thing is that when we set up the shows, the technology allowed us to keep people going through a very, very bad period of time. And we got used to working globally, a shutdown. And nobody could actually imagine that until it really happened. And then it was, how do you cope with it? How do you support people? Because that's the thing. It's a people business. It's a relationship business. It's a storyteller's business. And how do you get that story on the screen, no matter what size the screen is? How do you get a director's vision onto the screen? And when you get shut down, you start looking at technology in a whole new love affair way, because you got to get it done. And so we deployed, and I think without that, we would have really shut down a business and shut down lives. Coming back is the interesting part of it. And I'm sure Tim has words on that, because I know, well, I'm just going to let Tim talk about that, but I know inside of MPC and Migros, whether it's 3,000 people or 5,000 people, I will say that I did have an executive once that I had just finished a film with, and they were like, yeah, Andrea, how many people are at Migros? And I was like, 2,500, and he almost fell off his chair because he never realized it, because every show is a team, and it is a well-constructed, when it's well-constructed, it sings, and nobody feels it. Like, it's my job to make sure, and my team's job to make sure, we take it very seriously, that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if there's 6 movies going at the same time. It's that movie that you're working on. But Tim will talk about coming back to work.
Well, we don't make people come back to work. At Blur, we've let them work remote. I'm not sure that's a decision I would make if I wasn't on the committee that wanted to have that. But because I think we have look, I'll break it down to like animator level. I think if you're an animator with 10 years experience, the pandemic is great for you. You can, for instance, if you're a Hungarian animator and you would be forced to work at Digic, which is the best animation company in Hungary right now. But now you can get twice the salary by working remote in London. That's great for the artist. That's fucking shitty for the Hungarian animation facility, who used to have sort of a captive market. And if you were talented and you lived in Hungary and you wanted to stay near family and friends, that's where you had to work. So it was better for the company and worse for the artist. But I also think that if I was a young artist coming into the industry now and I had to live with my parents and I didn't get to socialize with other artists every day, I'm not sure how long I would stay in the industry, because that would be pretty depressing. I think you want to go, and it was like becoming part of some sacred priesthood back in the day, where you got to learn from all these really excellent people, and that doesn't happen as much, and that makes me sad. Will something replace it? Maybe.
Sure.
And then I'll say, from the last thing, from a facility owner standpoint, when I was in a room with a bunch of people, this monkey brain thing kicks in, that I feel responsible for these people. I feel responsible for their... Sorry. I feel responsible for their families. When they're face on Zoom, not so much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that, but
No.
it is.
I completely understand. I run a small company. The maximum that we're 7 employees. And I feel exactly the same like you, because at the end of the day, I'm the administrator of the company. We have to take care to be able to pay the payroll at the end of the month, get more jobs at the same time, and not close down. Continue what we're trying to do. So I cannot really... Unbelievable how you manage to keep with all that stress. For me, it's just 7 people. It's just like so it's incredible, and I completely understand what you mean. So yeah.
I think, Matthew, you were sharing the same sentiments. We were talking about that.
Yeah, I'm being really optimistic. I don't know why. I think you, as a business owner, you're the last one that can give up hope. And I think the moment you communicate any sense of fear or doubt. I mean, last night, we have one global email, guys here know, and from LA, they sent out an email saying, as from next week, it's a 4-day week, maybe drop down to 3. And there was like rattling in our studio. We're not there yet. We have a job which is happening, but I'm very fearful that we may be running out of work. But COVID taught me one thing: you do the best you can do. Because quite honestly, I can't do anything more than that. I just can't. I mean, so I'm being positive, and I'm going to be the one who's going to keep on spinning the wheels, kicking up, and trying to keep inspiration going. I don't know what to do, quite honestly, but yeah, that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. And I look at the creatives that I'm surrounded, not only in my office, but in parallel industries. And what burns me is that we are all excellent service providers, changing the tires on everybody else's cars. And the truth is, we all do a damn good, sterling, world-class job. And I would really like the opportunity in this slow time to go out and kit bash a car of our own together and put it on the racetrack and say, let's give it a shot. And that's what I'm trying to find the energy after having managed the day and seen to the payroll and figured out what there is out there to do. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I'm pretty sure it's no secret right now that the visual effects industry and animation industry is kind of going through a hard time internationally speaking. So we kind of needed to have this conversation, I feel.
Yeah,
Well, but I can tell you, Blur's been around for 30 years now, and last year we had to lay off some people, which is the first time we've ever had to do it in our 30-year history, and it was painful. But and it does suck right now. But I've seen a lot of these curves, and I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I can see some light coming back through. And we're in the trough right now, but I can see that we're going to be headed up soon, and I feel good about that. Take from that what you will. You always have to hustle. I mean, there has not been any one of those 30 years that there wasn't at least one sphincter tightening moment of is this job going to come in or is it not? But they do. You survive.
Well, I mean, as an educator, I think one thing that gives me hope is just how resilient young artists are, and I see it like on a daily basis, and they're probably outshine us all in their optimism, and I think that's like, something to kind of carry forward and think about, that they are like always really positive, even when it's like stuff is shit. They're still like.
It's because it's
hanging in
not
there.
just a job. We're artists and we're creating.
It's
So,
from passion, yeah?
yeah,
That's right. And I
we're
think
lucky
that's
to be
what-
doing it.
Me and Paul were
Yeah,
talking
we're
about
lucky.
that the other day because
Oh, yeah,
we
the
were
passion
saying,
to-
we
Yeah,
just
like,
work till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then people go,
Yeah, nobody
"Oh,
asks
that's
you
work."
for.
Well,
Yeah,
it's like,
nobody asks you for. It's
Yeah.
not all people go like, oh my God, you work so late. It's like, oh, I don't feel like I worked probably enough because this is what I want to do. Not everybody's forced, but to go into like passion, we're all here from passion, and I
mean, when
have
you love
this
it-
thing that I go, you need to go to obsession, like a positive obsession if you want to be the best, right? So then you go, what are you doing, huh? You almost every day you can keep on going. I mean, there are difficult times right now. A lot of people talk about IPs. Every company talks about IPs. They realize that it's good to go a little bit, not to put all eggs in one basket. We relied on all of us, of some same sources. It now shows is not the best solution. There are other markets, like there's the Asian market, there is the Indian market, there is a whole bunch of solutions. I managed to keep my core people like with a very tight sphincter, up to now. And then we tried and done some of my intellectual properties, like to try to keep these people that look at you like, what are we doing? One good outcome, a positive outcome. I managed to take a football team. It's called Control Chaos FC in these times of difficulties, and people are happy. There was a positive outcome. They're playing on the 7th of July in London. So from the same reasons, and I managed to bring a tiny a ray of light into this,
Alex.
Well, I would say that we're lucky to have this sort of diversity. So we do different things, and probably that's the best way to survive, to overcome all the difficult times, because they happen both in advertising business and in the film industry. And of course, we face some difficulties, as everyone at the moment. But it's really good. It's important to have a strong team. We have it. We have an international team, and we have different offices. And it's a combination of using both all the technologies to support this complicated pipeline. And at the same time, we really love to work all together to gain the creativity and to just to have this team spirit that helps to overcome all difficulties. That's why I'm personally standing for old-fashioned office when we have all people around, and the island actually gives you more opportunities, because like you can put people together here and they're interested in coming somewhere and just talking to someone alive.
There you go,
So,
Matthew.
yeah, and let's stay optimistic. I mean, there is always a place for creativity, for something that you can bring and you can share with the audience, and it's just a matter of time and a matter of how good you are in survival and overcoming the difficulties. But like everything is possible, and it's really important to save people, to make sure that you have your team all together. And you know, when you're standing shoulder to shoulder, it's much easier to pass through the difficult time.
Yeah, don't think I'm negative just because I cry. I cry really
I'm
easily.
crying all the time.
I cry really easily. You know?
You're just
So
emotional.
I'm very emotional, yes.
Yeah.
But usually it's because I'm proud, or because I feel something very powerful.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I understand you completely.
I'm extremely excited about the industry, more so actually than ever before. We were talking about before before the show started, and again, I feel like there are stories that I can't tell, or I couldn't tell. There's the books of China Mayville, Perdido Street Station, vastly complicated, thousands of characters in a futuristic steampunk city. It'd be too expensive to do that before and do it at the level that I want to do it at. But that shit suddenly seems within reach. So I think what will happen is we'll see a whole new kind of storytelling that is a bigger canvas told by smaller teams, but more work in general. At least that's my hope. And higher quality, I mean, is always good.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good note to end on. Before we take questions, I just had one last question, which we could go through the rounds, all of us. What advice would you give an aspiring artist who wanted to work in this industry? What advice would you give a young aspiring, creative person?
I get a lot of questions from people that say, how do I beat the algorithm? And it makes me really nervous about how people actually get jobs now, because it used to be, you know, you send in a resume, but now you put it into, you know, a search engine and you hope somebody's going to pick you. I still think interacting, it was what Tim said earlier about how you learn the business. I asked every single person I ever worked with, educate me. Amy's sitting in the front row over there, and she educated me on SGIs. My second day in a freezing room in digital domain, and I'll never forget it, because that was another thing I didn't know. So reaching out, sitting in this steamy room, listening to all of us, meet people. I always tell kids to parlay. Like my interns, I think I still breathe rarefied air. And I mean it, because I was never supposed to do this, and I fell into it, literally playing volleyball, like I said, and I love it, and I get to meet the most interesting people and work on projects and dream about things, and it can go anywhere from efficiencies to, oh my God, we can use this to make a bigger and better and top quality. So I think always being inquisitive, always talking to somebody, coming to events like this, meeting people, keeping in touch, and just tenacity in a way of either what you're learning and trying to learn a new software, if it's AI, whatever it is, just keep going. Because I think also one of the things, I don't know, you guys might disagree, but just being there and being in the room and showing up and do it, just keep going. Because there's going to be a ton of other people that stop. And then you're the person in the room. And that's how I mean, that's the advice I would give.
I agree with 100% with that. Take any job if you're starting out, emptying the trash cans, answering the phones. I don't care what it is. When I wanted the job in the comics industry, I went to Marvel, and I'm like, I'll answer phones. I'll take the garbage out. They couldn't even get a job doing that. But number one, have talent. Number two, yes, get any job you can to get your foot in the door. Because if you're there, then you see all kinds of opportunities. Maybe they hired you to make coffee, but so what? You'll still hear the conversation in the next room where they need somebody to write some copy or to do some cleanup animation or whatever. Or at least you get access to cool tech that you could work on late at night when everybody else goes home. That's the biggest thing. And then network. That's if you have talent, then knowing people, and they're going to be the ones that say, hey, I heard about these people need some help over there. Don't. And you can do that online. But having great work is the best calling card if it is online. Post your work, get people to talk about it. I can't tell you how many times I've just guessed people's names at companies because you figure out the way they write their emails. Everybody is, tim.miller@blur.com. So you send them a fucking email, and maybe they delete it or maybe they read it, right? But make that email short and put some really talented stuff on it, right?
Tim's right.
That's not my email, by the way.
Damn.
Now we're all going to email you. But you're right.
Everybody knows my email's been linked to many nefarious internet things. Yeah. Yes, it was.
John?
Yeah, well, so advice. So I'm going to be like summarizing what's being said, and I'm going to do it in point form.
Okay.
Okay, so believe in yourself. That's what you've been saying.
Not
in
the way most of you use the internet to please yourself. He's talking about... Sorry.
I know. I was thinking artistically, believe in yourself as an artist. And what Tim also mentioned before, it came up through the conversation, that art and entrepreneurship are inherently linked. So if you want to actually release anything to the public, be it a book, be it an animation, be it a film or whatever, you have to believe in your product and then know how to sell it, or at least know how to make it worth it. Not just put it on a shelf or leave it on your computer. And also teamwork and networking and understanding. Be curious about software. For example, one of the problems that we've had is that not everybody wanted to work on the same software that the director wanted to, so you have to adapt. So networking and being part of a team is practically the best thing you can get, because you're getting free lessons.
Yeah.
So that is my actual advice.
Matt?
My turn. So I think be inspired is a really important statement as I see it, because young guys change their mind too often, in my opinion. It's today they're in love with this and tomorrow they're in love with that. And it seems that we're missing that North Star there. We're missing that overarching aspiration, something that you're dedicated to achieving over a set number of time. So I think being inspired and wanting to go somewhere and ready to sacrifice and dedicate time to that is an important aspect.
Maybe that's like what Paul was saying earlier, the obsessive, good obsession.
Good obsession. and also to think about your personal development besides your artistic development, because sometimes those two get enmeshed. And I think when you get challenged or you fail artistically, some might think that they fail personally.
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow them to get up and to try again and to learn from the mistakes.
Yeah.
I feel as artists, we can identify, we become human doings instead of human beings. You are a human being and then you do what you do. And they have very closely related, but you're allowed to fail, you're allowed to get up, you're allowed to move on and become stronger. And that's my 2 cents.
Oh, I love that. But I'm a teacher, so I 100% buy into that. Yeah.
Bukowski said, find something you love and let it kill you.
That's a
Right,
nice
so,
one.
so then you go into like find as soon as possible if you really want to be in this business,
Yeah.
right? And then raise it to obsession level to be the best, right? So it's all connected in my head. There's a master plan, and well, actually, this is my sci-fi film. We won like 50 festivals, I think, in the world. It's a sci-fi steampunk, really good. But I'm mentioning this because one of our T-shirts ideas were like never give up, never surrender, right? One of them, right? Because you learn more by not having much
Yeah.
than just an opulence of things. So there is no wastage, right, in all of these things, and you can do amazing things nowadays, even with your phone. To be honest, like always, write a good script, right? It's the idea, and like literally, well, the other sentence we had, we don't sleep, we pass out. So there are a whole bunch of things like think about if you want to be in this business, but it's an amazing, beautiful business with amazing, beautiful people. And I encourage you to contact everybody, be nice, go to events like this. I like teaching. I mentioned to you, I teach around the world, and I'm very approachable. I hired from university. I try to hire every year one individual, for example, to move him into a bigger facility, and then it's quite inspirational all the time for the rest around and for the next year, right? Because they know, they are always hiring somebody, so why don't, be nice, be good, talented, and there is a chance,
Yeah.
My first 3 jobs in the industry I got from coming to these kind of things and asking questions. And then afterwards, you'd come up and I'd talk to them, and they would go, "Oh, those were good questions. What do you do?" And then you go, "I'm an artist, and I'd like to do this." Yeah. And then you parlay those things into it's the networking thing.
Yeah, it's always like you find in between you here, right? Because a lot of times it's like a chain reaction, like you have a job, and now suddenly the surrounding of you has a bigger chance, So just. Always.
That's why we have like 15 French people at our studio, because I hired one good French guy. And then,
well, one of the schools is French.
And then they want me to hire all their friends.
Tim, you just need one Maltese person in there. It's gonna change it up.
One of the schools is French, actually. We're hiring one every year, so the more French people, less
But you don't
French
want me to hire
Italians.
any Maltese people.
We hired one French guy. We thought that was enough.
But if I started hiring Maltese, then they won't be available for you, because I'm sexier.
Alex, did you have any?
Well, it's really hard to compete with Team, but I would say that yes. First of all, just don't stop educating yourself, and that's not only related to new technologies. Of course, it's important to know what is solar, what is Luma or Sora. It can be really helpful, and those things can affect our future as artists. But at the same time, educate yourself in terms of the history of art. Just look around. You have great architecture here. You have great museums around, especially in Europe. And if you have a wish to become an artist, you need to learn art but by every mean. You just need to dedicate yourself to that. And then it doesn't matter what instrument you're gonna use to succeed. It can be whatever, but you definitely gonna be in the top, So just believe in yourself. Don't be afraid, and educate yourself.
Right. Excellent. So now.
What do you tell people, Paula?
Me? Oh God.
What do you send them off into the wild?
Well,
What advice do you say?
So
The
to my
warning.
students, always the power of the network. So as in always on Freshers Week, we have like new fresh 17-year-olds rocking up to want to learn animation. And a thing I do in my first lecture where I welcome everyone is I ask them to turn left and right and introduce themselves to each other. And then I say to them, you're looking at the person that's going to give you your job reference. You're looking at the person who's going to, potentially be your window into your job. So that's what I do. I tell them to be nice and that their colleagues and their networks are the things that are going to last the longest. Was that good?
No,
Was that all right?
It's good. I would just add,
Good answer, correct answer.
and don't suck.
Yeah,
And-
of course.
and then
Well,
you- and
but
then
it's
you got
our
don't
job
suck
to make
and go
sure
in the
they
world.
don't
Best
suck,
advice,
right?
don't suck.
Yeah, well,
I
they have
don't-
3 years with us, so then obviously during those 3 years, we're trying to make sure they don't suck, right?
Exactly.
That's our job.
But I do feel like we have a whole generation of and maybe it started in California where I live, of saying anybody can do anything at any time and we can all be great. We can't all be great.
No, that's right.
I've worked with Jim Cameron. I am not Jim Cameron, or I'm not as
Yeah.
good as David Fincher, and I recognize that.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that anybody can do anything, and I don't think that that's depressing to be that, because I can't be David Fincher means I can focus on being Tim Miller.
Yeah.
And it's just different.
Yeah, it's reality.
Yeah.
Like, and
But you have to have
People-
talent. It's
Yeah.
and if not, you're wasting your parents' money sending you to
So-
college. So make the most of it.
So did anyone have any questions? Oh, great.
I need a job.
No pressure, no pressure. No, first of all, I'd like to ask, when can we expect Perdido Street Station directed by Tim Miller? And would you do the other books as well? Because I'd love to see The Scar specifically.
It's a trilogy, so they
Yeah.
all go together. A while.
but,
Because AI
um,
is just beginning to make it possible. Right?
Yeah.
Up until now, I've been
And I mean, the
thinking,
bug sex wouldn't be weird because, like, Shape of Water did that already.
Or
so it's
not.
like- yeah.
Yeah.
No, but my real question is, we talked about, how I'm coming from a writing perspective mainly, so I can't really speak to job precarity or job loss among visual artists and other technicians, but thinking of, for example, the other big pop culture behemoth we've been living under, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? And now we're at the point where we're talking about superhero fatigue, right? And when you think about it, what Marvel did is what AI did. They had 60, 70 plus years of comic books and history, and they pulped them together to make these adaptations. They hired indie directors whose identity was lost in the ultimate. They just flattened them because they had to follow the editorial line. So I'm wondering I haven't cooked this idea completely, and that's why I'm putting it to you. Like, do you think we will have these sort of cycles and flashpoints with the AI, with all the AI tools, that we're going to get a sense of fatigue, and we're going to feel like we need to return to something more subjective, something more genuine. What are your thoughts on this?
me? I'll stop.
Yeah, I guess.
Everyone,
Everyone's looking at
People
you.
want to hear
Tim.
from me. I'll just say that my own experience is that when I start to look around these days, I'm kind of already tired of it. I'm tired of most of the stuff that it has a feel to it right now, and that's like probably the first time people invented paintbrushes. Every painting felt very similar, but I'm tired of it, and it becomes so easy that it's just kind of overwhelming, and it's not special anymore. So I think it will happen quickly. What's the next evolution of that? I don't know. But that's the way I feel about all technologies. You don't really know where it's going to go, but I have some faith that it'll go someplace interesting because we'll make it go there, right? But now it just has to work through the cycle, and luckily for all of us, or unluckily, it's doing it very quickly, right? It was images, then it was moving pictures, now it's anything. And writing too. I'm sorry to say, but
Oh, we have another question.
Oh yes, I love the optimism. It's interesting though because I'm looking at Tim and I'm thinking about Skynet the whole time. But I'm just wondering because, we did have these two major strikes with the writers and the actors, and a lot of it was over AI. And I'm just wondering, because I'm not a designer myself, but I use designers and I love the work that they do, but I'm just wondering what protection is there for these designers, especially emerging designers who, again, they want to put their stuff out there because they want to be seen, but at the same time with AI and it just absorbing all of this, like what protection is there? And also, just to be frank about it, it's like we know that a lot of designers, either in film or in gaming, they've been overworked and had tons of timeline crunches. So it's like, I'm just wondering what protection is there for a designer, especially emerging ones who don't have any establishment or can't afford $500 an hour entertainment lawyers to prove the validity of the ownership of their creations?
Me and Paul were talking about Adobe, and
No names.
Huh?
No names.
No names. Well.
Protection is not. To be honest, like in our field, everybody knows visual effects, animation. They are not very protected as a field, right? Nobody talked about visual effects strike because it doesn't exist, right? So let's face it. It's the reality, Yeah, but it's the reality. We all know in our field, there's so many things going on. And now if you drop in AI on top, well, I don't know.
I think it's pretty hard to regulate the field of ideas, whether it's writing or visual. It's really hard. Honestly, I wouldn't put any stock in or any hope in waiting for that to happen. I'd figure out how to use the new technology to make new things. You still have to do. It is a hammer is an interesting piece of technology, but you still have to use it to make stuff. And AI is the same way. And I just wouldn't waste time worrying about protecting it because you can't. I personally think that the writer's strike was the writers will never make the money back that they lost during the strike, and it'll be hard for them to regain the ground that they lost. And if VFX artists did the same thing, I'm sorry to say that I think they would be replaced in short order too.
Today we were mentioning when we were talking before that something that I learned today is that motion capture can be copyrighted in some way or another. So,
well, motion capture can be copyrighted.
For example, body movement or...
Should ask Andy Serkis, I don't know. But, just in my head still, because you said you're writing, right? No, the writer was, ideas are coming from nothing, from your brain, So I don't think that you should be afraid of that. We just have to make more stories, better stories, faster stories. Writers should use AI if they think they're losing out, because it's still out of you, out of your brain, from the ether. That's the beauty of creation, right? So from the ether, you bring something and you put it here. So I'm not really thinking, to be honest, about AI threatening me at all, on a daily basis, honestly.
We have another question.
One more. Hello.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you all about virtual production, actually, and who has worked in BP, and how you see that change, and anything you've done particularly, and how you see that change in the industry as we focus on kind of previs and working with Unreal Engine people and LED tech and camera tracking and all this stuff. How is that going to affect the worlds you work in, and also kind of current and emerging talent?
I have a lot of experience in this, because, Control Chaos is one of the core things, is Unreal Engine, pre-visualization, motion capture, camera, just to make better products faster, right, is the idea. And then to save money in the beginning of the process, not late on, to work with the directors, to work with clients, to put as fast as possible their ideas onto screen. If I make a film of mine, I use that 100% on everything I do, because I just need to be more prepared when you're on set and somebody asks you so what do we do? It's not cool to go, I don't know, right? So you already chewed the film, you already done the most you can do out of it, like cinematography, lenses, you can bring it to a good state. It does not mean that you do exactly that, but you're more prepared, and most of the time these tools help the rest of the people to understand what are we doing. because a lot of times on set, only a few people know what, in a classical film, only a few people know what you're doing. The rest are going, I don't know. So like Jungle Book, for example, right, which I supervised, was completely in this realm, right? So the entire film was done with the use of pre-visualization, but the difference to other films was like the DP, which is Bill Pope. He shot it, right? And then Jon Favreau directed.
Are you talking more like live action film or for animation? Right, but is the end result animated or is the end result live action?
Live action, okay. Yeah, okay, so I was talking about live action, but if I'm doing an animation...
Well, not with The Lion King. Yeah.
I quit by that time. Sorry. Well, I moved on from there, but but it is very heavily used for tools, because in Jungle Book we never really been to the jungle. It was shot in downtown LA. All right, so the calculation of a swimming pool, for example, when you start, if you see the film, it's like an entire jungle, water simulations. It was a swimming pool in a parking lot. So how do you calculate that? It's reality. When we did calculate, and it worked. So the same thing. There's so many techniques, but you should use these techniques at this stage. I can't emphasize this enough. Not only for big films. I think smaller films will benefit a lot because just put thought into the film before you spend the big money.
I'm a huge believer in it. So much so that I would get shit on a daily basis from Arnold Schwarzenegger because he'd go, Tim with his fucking iPad, he's always here showing, okay, in this shot, the way we prevised it is, because everybody can see the sequence that you're making and it gives a chance for all the departments to chime in. I think that's, if I had one place to put money for tools and research in the entire animation pipeline, whether it's live action or animation, it would be virtual pre-production and layout, because that's where everybody fucks it up or gets it right. And if you do it right, it provides this roadmap for the entire production, whether it's live action or CG. On Deadpool, that 12 bullets sequence, which was originally 18 bullets before we got budget cuts. But the 12 bullet, I had a whole previs done months and months before, and every panel of every shot was planned, and that allowed us to do it in the time we had. The idea that you can go and scan a location and have the director do a recce there and pick his shots and do a shot list, fucking amazing, right? Because the less people have to ask on the day, what are we doing, the better.
Okay, so on that note, Sue has been waving at me to remind us that there's drinks and cooler, fresh air in the courtyard. Yeah, but would you please all join me in a round of applause? Say thank you. Brilliant.
We didn't talk about LED panels. No, I'm joking.
No, let's not talk about LED.
What was that?
So we didn't talk about LED panels. Like, no.
I love it. I'm so excited about shooting in the volume. I've gone to the Mandalorian set twice. Although, here's what I observed, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, I said LED panel.
No, it's just the one thing, just real quick, was you think, oh my God, it's going to be so fast. Everybody's going to be moving so fast because they don't have to move the lights. They move at the same fucking pace that they move every other time. It drives me crazy.